Live NFL trivia every Tuesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge and have a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. Picture this. You're about to get drafted into the NFL. You're moments away from achieving your lifelong dream, playing on the biggest stage that the sport has to offer, and making millions and millions of dollars in the process. Would you throw it all away for a basketball game? Would you throw it all away to go to a basketball game and risk the possibility of sliding in the draft and losing millions of dollars? For most of you, the answer is probably no. I think most of us, when presented with that option, would not go to the game in question. However, in 2000, one prospect thought otherwise, and it went from him almost being a surefire thing to get chosen by the team in question to slide a bit down the draft board. In 2000, the Philadelphia Eagles decided not to draft Plaxico Burress and removed him from their board entirely, all over a game of basketball. And this is the story behind that. Before I talk about the incident in question, we need some context as to how the Eagles were looking heading into the 2000 NFL Draft. In 1999, the Eagles spent their first-round pick on a guy that they hoped would be the man to lead the franchise for years to come. That man, of course, was Donovan McNabb. During that rookie season, McNabb looked like your typical rookie. He had some great moments, like a 3-touchdown performance on the final week of the season against the St. Louis Rams, and he had some bad moments, like a game against the Cowboys where he completed just 41% of his passes while taking 3 sacks and throwing for 49 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. That comes out to a passer rating of 24.4, which is worse than if you did nothing but spike the ball to the ground on every single play. But one thing was clear with McNabb. He was going to be the guy. This was not Doug Peterson's team. This was not Coy Detmer's team. Heading into 2000, this was Donovan McNabb's team, and he was going to get a full season to prove himself. And the most important thing you can do to help any young quarterback is surround him with talent. Surround him with good skill players that he can get the ball to. And it's safe to say that in 1999, yeah, the Eagles did not have that. The Eagles had the worst receiving unit in football during that 1999 campaign. The leading receiver on the team was Torrance Small, who had 655 yards. The top guy on the Eagles ranked 53rd in the league in that category. Small also led the team with 49 receptions, which ranked 59th in the league. There were 3 players on the Carolina Panthers with more receptions than Philly's top guy. And the only other player on the Eagles with more than 300 receiving yards was Charles Johnson, who was in a noticeable decline ever since posting 1,000 yards with the Steelers 3 years before. I'm not saying Philly's quarterbacks were even close to good in 1999, as there was a reason why the team was ranked dead last in passing yards, but their receivers were not exactly helping them out at all. Considering the goal going forward was to develop Donovan McNabb, perhaps the biggest need for the Eagles heading into the 2000 NFL Draft was a wide receiver. Philly had the 6th pick, so there was no shot of them getting the top guy, which was Florida State wide receiver Peter Ward. He was even projected at one time as the top pick in the entire class. Who was the next best guy on the board? That would be a man by the name of Plaxico Burress. Plaxico seemed like the perfect fit for the Eagles and for a guy like McNabb. Anytime you have a receiver who's 6'5" and can make plays, you know he's going to be highly coveted. And Burress was coming off of a fantastic career at Michigan State. In 1998, he had 65 receptions for 1,013 yards and 8 touchdowns, ranking inside the top 5 in the Big Ten in all 3 of those categories. He followed that up in 1999 with an even better season, posting 66 receptions for 1,142 yards and 12 touchdowns. The 12 receiving touchdowns led the Big Ten and finished 3rd in the entire NCAA. Burress was projected by everyone as a top 10 pick, and Philly was interested in acquiring his services. They were so interested, in fact, that they set up an in-person meeting with him. The meeting was supposed to be sometime during the weekend of April 1st. The NFL Draft was pretty early that year, as the first round was only 2 weeks later on April 15th. A meeting this late was already cutting it pretty close to an extent, but everything seemed like it was going to go full speed ahead. Plaxico and the Eagles would meet with each other, and the Eagles would be one step closer to solving their receiving problems. Then, something happened. Michigan State basketball started winning games in the NCAA tournament. Head coach Tom Izzo had taken the Spartans to the next level. He turned them from a team hovering between the first weekend of the NCAA tournament and the NIT to a consistent contender. The year before, he guided Sparty to their first Final Four since 1979. And in 2000, they were back. When Michigan State beat Wisconsin 53-41, it clinched a spot in the national championship. And Plaxico wasn't going to miss it for the world. He had friends on the team. He knew how big this moment was. He wanted to support them. Instead of watching it on TV, he wanted to fly out to Indianapolis and be there. With that, he canceled and tried to reschedule all of his meetings with NFL teams during that time frame. One meeting was with the New York Jets, who had 4 first-round picks and were considering trading up to get him. He rescheduled that pretty easily. And when he tried to do the same and reschedule his meeting with the Eagles, yeah, they weren't having it. Philly essentially gave him an ultimatum. It's either us or the game. If you go to the game, we're not rescheduling this meeting, and you're coming off of our draft board. When Burress went to the game, that was it. Philly outright canceled the visit and went one step further and created a smear campaign against Burress, saying that he had a bad attitude and creating some other rumors about him. By this point, Burress was furious. He said, "What have I done to people for them to say this type of stuff about me? I've never had any on the field or off the field problems. I don't hang around people that are troublemakers." But at least with Philly, the damage was done. What seemed like a match made in heaven was now completely shattered. As for how it worked out in the end with what Philly decided to do, well, it's complicated. When the 6th pick in the draft rolled around, Plaxico was still on the board. However, to no one's surprise, the Eagles passed on him. They took Florida State defensive tackle Corey Simon. On one hand, this was a pretty good pick. In 5 seasons, he started pretty much every game at defensive tackle, and was named a Pro Bowler during the 2003 season. He had multiple seasons with double-digit tackles for a loss, and was one of the better defensive tackles in football during his peak. On the other hand, Plaxico would also go on to have a very good career. He had 4 seasons with over 1,000 yards receiving. He finished his career with slightly under 8,500 yards. He found the end zone 70 times if we include the playoffs. And anytime he played the Eagles, he seemed to take it personally, as in 11 meetings, including the playoffs, he scored 8 touchdowns. One of these touchdowns was a walk-off overtime game winner in 2006 during a 30-24 victory. If the Eagles had drafted Plaxico, they wouldn't have had to deal with being destroyed by him for the better half of the 2000s. But perhaps most importantly, if the Eagles draft Plaxico in 2000, it means they don't draft a wide receiver in the first round in 2001, which means they don't wind up completely whiffing on Freddie Mitchell. In other words, it's tough to say whether or not the Eagles would have been better or worse in the long run with Plaxico on their team compared to how things eventually played out. But it's crazy how the future of the NFL changed forever over a simple game of basketball. If Michigan State doesn't make it to the championship, which they won, instead of remembering Plaxico Burress in the Giant Blue or the Steeler Black, we might be remembering Plaxico Burress in Eagle Green. Be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaredGator9 and subscribe to 60-second NFL History on YouTube. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.